What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with the video. Fantasy playoffs are here, at least after tonight's games. Congrats to everyone who made it. Good luck to those of you who need help tonight. As is tradition, my website will be 100% free during the fantasy playoffs and then into the NFL playoffs as well. That includes, obviously the weekly rankings, things like that, but also any sort of sports betting, DFS content you want to see, even detailed projections, all of that free. So as I update the pages this week, which most of that gets updated like Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll start to see it. You will not see it on the app. I'm not updating the code base and sending that to Apple and waiting for them to take 3 weeks to update that. So everything on the website will be free. So for waivers, as was the case last week and really the last couple of weeks, but mostly last week starting then, you're really only looking at running back and defense. You shouldn't be streaming quarterback anymore. The odds that you're going to hit on some free agent wide receiver, tight end at this point is fairly low. With every successive week, more and more of your bench should be running back stashes and definitely defense stashes as well. If we get to next week, the week after, you truly just do not care about your third or fourth string wide receiver that you're not going to use, your backup tight end. We're going to get to the point where your entire bench should be running backs and defenses. That's not the case yet. So right now you still you could have an injury wide receiver. You could have a tough matchup. You could have someone in a horrible weather spot that you want to stream, or just players you kind of flip-flop between based on matchup. So you can still have backups at those positions, but we should start to kind of look ahead, see what we're going to need, and mostly be filling up our bench with running back and defense, with defense being pretty important because that's kind of like the number one differentiator you can actually control at this point of the season. For the most part, your team is kind of set at quarterback, tight end, wide receiver, and for the most part, if there's no injuries, running back as well. But defense, everyone still has control over. There are defenses sitting there right now on free agency that are going to make or break matchups in the fantasy playoffs, are going to be the reason people win or lose their matchup. So I think because it's most important, we should probably talk about it the most in this video. For week 15, so this coming week, there are actually a lot of really good options. It's a great week for streaming defense. In week 16, that is not the case. In week 17, not the case. So keep that in mind. That should play into your decision making for who you go after in week 15, especially if you don't have a lot of roster space. If you've got easily 2 bench spots that can be streaming defenses, you're not worried as much because you can just take multiple. While there's not a lot of options for 16 and 17, there are still fine options. So you could have a defense for this week, a defense for next week, a defense for 17 in case you make it that far, and you're totally fine, right? But for some of you, you've got a really good team. Maybe you have players you straight up don't want to drop because you don't want your opponents adding them. And maybe you can only afford to roster 1 or at most 2 defenses. So you got to start thinking, okay, who are some defenses I can stream multiple weeks instead of just one? The obvious choice that I've mentioned every week that should be 100% rostered is the Texans. If they're still there, grab them. Next best option is the Seahawks. They're probably also not available. They play the Colts this coming week. They're going to be, they're a great defense playing at home against a third-string quarterback. Obvious options there. Odds are both the Texans and Seahawks are not available. If that is the case, I think the number one option people want to go after is the Saints. But again, going back to it depends what you're looking for. The Saints are great because you have an out all of the next 3 weeks. They're home versus the Panthers this coming week, so week 15. They are home versus the Jets in week 16. Then they're at the Titans in week 17. So you've got 3 consecutive really strong matchups. Obviously, it's not the 3 best matchups you can have, but 3 strong matchups in a row. You are sacrificing a little bit in terms of variance to the degree of how strong the defense is, right? When we get these great defenses at home in great spots, the variance on the top end shoots up to the point where it's much more likely they hit for a game where they're scoring 17 to 20 fantasy points. The Saints defense themselves is fine, but it's not that amazing. And so you lower the chance that they rack up 6, 7 sacks, that one of them turns into a fumble recovery touchdown. And you increase the chance that they lay an egg. So the Saints are not in a spot in any of these 3 games where I'm guaranteed 7 or 8 points, really high upside. This coming week, they are 2.5 point home underdogs to the Panthers. And the Panthers love to run the ball, so there could easily be an outcome here where the Saints score 2 fantasy points. So I want people to understand that. The value of adding the Saints defense is that you have 3 consecutive outs. If you continue to advance, you could stream the Saints defense every week. The odds are in these 3 matchups, they'll have a good game, a mediocre game, and a bad game. And I don't know exactly where that's going to happen. That's probably the most likely outcome. But again, I listed them first because truly week 16 is really difficult. Like, unless you have the Texans stash, they're going to probably project for like 3 more points than any other defense. There's some okay options, but there aren't any like amazing plays. So just the simple fact you could just play the Saints moving forward adds a lot of value. And obviously playing them at home against the Jets, don't know who the quarterback's going to be just yet, but whoever they play isn't going to be that good. It'll be one of the better spots that they have. So I do think the Saints are still, even considering that they're not that amazing of an actual defense, probably the best option to go after because it gives you all of those outs. Option number 2 is to say, I don't care about all of these outs. I have enough spots on my bench where I can roster a minimum of 2 defenses, and that's 2 defenses like a starter and a bench. Like if you could like just have 2 total defenses on your team. If you're going to go that route, you could either just say, I'm going to add the Saints, and then I'm going to grab someone for week 15. Once week 16 rolls along, I have the option of keeping the Saints and then maybe dropping the option I picked up this week to go for someone else and kind of just keep doing that and just keep rostering the Saints in case you get beat out for streaming defenses next week and there's nothing you really want. You could just roll with the Saints. That's basically option 2. I think it's a pretty strong option. At this point, I do think you should devote 2 spots to defense. I would be going after the Saints. After that, it really it's going to come down to the projections again on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. They'll be live tomorrow. All of you for free can look at that. Right now, how I think I'll probably have, again, they're projection based, but how I think the rankings probably should be in general are: number 1, Texans versus Cardinals. Number 2, Seahawks versus Colts. Possibility Seahawks jump over the Texans. We'll see how that comes out. After that, how I think it'll be ranked is Eagles versus the Raiders, Jaguars versus the Jets, Bears versus the Browns, 49ers versus the Titans, Saints versus the Panthers, Steelers versus the Dolphins, Cowboys versus the Vikings, and then Bucks versus the Falcons. As you can see in that ranking, the Saints are not at the top. So optimally, if you want to be going after the best options, if the Texans and the Seahawks aren't available, I do think the Eagles versus the Raiders is a really good option. I think the Jaguars versus the Jaguars are great, or Jaguars versus the Jets are great. If you could land one of those 2 and combine them with the Saints, that gives you an option between the 2 of those this week. And then next week, if we don't have a good matchup, we can just drop that defense, add a different one. I will point out the Eagles do have a pretty solid option the next week. It's at the Commanders. I think a lot of you should basically go after Seahawks and Eagles. I think that's probably the best combination for the next 2 weeks if both of them happen to be available. It's possible you added the Eagles this week to play against the Chargers, or it's possible that maybe they got dropped because they're playing the Chargers. One of those things is a possibility, but I think that combination is pretty good because in both 15 and 16, you get an out. If we're looking at other week 16 defenses, Texans versus the Raiders, again, they're the top matchup. I do think the Saints will probably be the number 2 option versus the Jets in week 16, but that should go to show you how tough week 16 is going to be. The Bills are going to be at the Browns. That'll be good. The Chiefs are at the Titans. That'll be decent. People have pointed out sometimes, I haven't mentioned the Chiefs a lot for 16. The Chiefs defense has been good, but they haven't really forced a ton of turnovers. And so they're on the road. That gives you a couple docked points for the projection there. The Titans have at least played a little bit better as of late. They had a pretty good game this last week against a really, really good Browns defense on the road. And so projection-wise, I don't know that the Chiefs are going to stand out as an amazing play to where you'd imagine they're probably going to project number 1. It's a bad week. They'll probably project top 5, but I don't think they're as good a play as people are kind of pointing out. Then you have Eagles at Commanders. You've got Seahawks versus the Rams, Broncos versus the Jaguars, Giants versus the Vikings, and Cardinals versus the Falcons. But again, a lot of those are terrible. A lot of those, not terrible, but it's Seahawks are great defense, but against the Rams, you don't really want that. Broncos, really good defense. Against the Jaguars, how much do you want to play them? Do you really want to touch the Giants defense? It's like, and these are all what I think are going to rank inside the top 10. Like these are going to be the best defense plays. So again, that's why I think the Saints are the best to go after, because it gives you those outs. But if you wanted to go after multiple, take the Saints, take the Eagles, the Jaguars, the Bears, the 49ers. Like these are teams you should probably be adding to the Saints, because maybe you don't want to play the Saints this week with all the good matchups, but since we'll want them next week, they're good to go after. Then for week 17, championship weekend, another week where it's probably going to be a little bit difficult. You're looking at Seahawks at the Panthers, Titans versus the Saints, Browns versus Steelers, Texans at Chargers, Saints at Titans, Patriots at Jets, and Steelers at Browns. Another spot where it's like, I don't think the projections are going to be that amazing for any defenses, but the Saints are on the list at the Titans, so probably should go after them. So that's how defense is looking. Spend whatever you want. If you've got like $55 in fab left, I truly would not care about spending half of that on defense. Like we are at the point of the season where every single week it's less and less and less likely that any one running back gets injured. Also understand that it's going to be difficult to even predict that. If one of the running backs get injured, it's possible they're already rostered on a team like the backup. Like the odds that there is next week some clear number one running back that you have to go after on fab, it's minimal. Like the better outcome here, or the more likely outcome, is that you land one of the top defenses. That gives you maybe a couple extra points this coming week, and that puts you over the edge to win your matchup. That's way more likely than holding onto your fab, hoping that there's some amazing skill player free agent. It's probably not going to happen, and if it does, it might not even be available in your league. So we are looking, though, at some handcuffs, because if there is an injury, that is also the best path to, at skill player, having a chance at upsetting these top teams. Some of the top non-handcuff running backs are Blake Corum. I guess it's whatever you want to call him, if he's a handcuff or not, but I feel like at this point he's kind of jumped into like non-handcuff territory. But Blake Corum, Chris Rodriguez, and then the Miami Dolphins backup running backs. Truly don't know if you'll really use any of them rest of the season, but I would say they're the top non-handcuffs. Corum has at least 7 rush attempts in 7 straight games. He's up to 5.4 yards per carry in the season. He looks fantastic. He's getting drives on his own. He's not being taken off the field. So when they get those drives into the red zone, unless he had like 8 consecutive carries or something, which probably is not going to happen if he has 7 to 12 in the entire game, he's not taken off the field. So he gets the goal line rush and he can score. So are there better plays at running back too? Obviously, but like the Rams look like the best team in the NFL right now. If he's going to have goal line opportunities, if he's going to get touches, he's not the worst play in the world at running back too. Problem is, he does have 13 receiving yards on the entire season, and so he is going to need that touchdown. He's going to need a great game, but he's probably the best, we'll say just quote-unquote handcuff in fantasy right now, because at worst, if you're in a dire situation, you could use him at running back too. Similar-ish take to Rodriguez. He's not on the best team in the NFL, but he actually is like a starting running back right now. He should be getting good rest of the season straight of the schedule. Should be getting 12 to 15 carries most games moving forward. The problem is it will come with 0 receptions. Like he literally has 1 catch this year. On the entire year, he has 1 reception for 6 yards. So most games, he's going to have 4 to 6 full PPR points. So if you play in standard scoring, sure, if you're playing half PPR, like he's still just not going to project as a running back too, but he would be an option at running back too if that was like the only weakness in your team and you needed someone who could hopefully fall into the end zone, because he does have a good schedule rest of the season. And then with the Miami running backs, it seems like Achan's going to be fine. They said he was cleared to return to the game, but they were annihilating the Jets, so there was no need to. Like maybe he didn't have a long-term injury, but he was banged up a little bit. There's no need to when you're up by 1 million points and the backups are playing well to throw him out there. I don't think you need to go after Ollie Gordon. I don't think you need to go after Jalen Wright. But if you had Achan, I would. So for those of you who have Achan, it kind of looked like Jalen Wright was the direct backup, that if Achan were to miss time, Wright might be the one we're playing. Ollie is still used at the goal line, so maybe there's more touchdown upside with Ollie. I also think Ollie's just the better running back, so it's up to you which one you wanted to go after. But again, I'd really only go after those guys. If you had Achan, this made you real nervous, because at this point you are handcuffing, right? Like if you've got these elite running backs, you've got him, you've got Saquon, you've got Bijan, you've got Kyron, like you've got these guys who have a clear backup behind them. the worst thing that can happen to your team is obviously an injury to this stud, because there's a huge downgrade from the running back ones to any sort of like low end 2 to high end 3 to be starting. So grab the handcuffs. If your guy goes down, it hurts, but maybe you can kind of get some of those points back. And realistically, for some of these guys, like for Corum, if you had Kyron, we would probably project Corum for more fantasy points than Kyron if there was an injury. So you wouldn't be hoping for an injury, but it wouldn't be the worst case scenario if it did happen. If you don't have Corum and you have Kyron on your roster, that'll sink you. You will not be winning a championship if you don't have that. So I don't know. There's something to think about for the handcuffs. For everyone else, when you don't have these guys, tier 1, basically how I would rank the handcuffs if you've got one extra bench spot and you're like, all right, I've added some of these wide receivers. They haven't worked out. I know who my wide receiver is going to be. Plus I have 1 or 2 options behind them. I do not need this other option on my bench. How I would rank the handcuffs right now is purely based off of upside. The odds that any single running back gets hurt is basically the same at this point. Like, you basically are like, who's going to get hurt in week 15? Probably no one, but we can't pinpoint who it is. So all we care about is what is the value of these backups if they become the starter. How I would rank it is tier 1, Brian Robinson Jr., Tyler Algier, Blake Corum, and Emmanuel Wilson. If you have McCaffrey, Bijan, Kyron, Jacobs, you should have the handcuff to these running backs. And if you don't have those guys, these are the top handcuffs to go after. They will be running back 1s if the starter goes down. In tier 2, you have Kenneth Gainwell, Chuba Hubbard, Bashal Tutin, Tank Bigsby. Less important to roster these handcuffs if you have the starter, but still not a bad idea to do. And those are good ones to roster on your bench for some upside. And honestly, Kenneth Gainwell at this point feels like he's scoring a decent amount of fantasy points on his own. Same thing with Hubbard. But is it enough to start them running back 2? Probably not. Then in tier 3, I would say it's Tyjae Spears, Sean Tucker, Isaiah Davis, Ray Davis. Much less important to roster these backups if you have the starter. But again, not a bad idea. If you're going to rely on Tony Pollard moving forward, why not just roster Tyjae Spears if you had an injury? At least you have something you can use in replacement there. I did not mention guys like Devin Neal, Kyle Monangai, Charbonnet. They're rostered in too many leagues to make this video, but then also they have enough standalone value on their own that I don't really consider them handcuffs at all. But if they were available, they'd be at the top of the running back list. Aside from that, again, the odds are you're not even looking at these positions in free agency, but if you're looking for wide receiver, you should have done so last week. But if Mike Evans is still there, he didn't return last week, but I do think he's going to return this coming week once he's back. I don't know exactly where he'll project in this coming matchup, but I think he'd be flex viable. Like, if I, wanted some upside in my flex spot, especially if I was an underdog and I added Mike Evans, I'd be comfortable throwing him out there. He could easily only play 60% of snaps, but have 3 for 100 and a touchdown on those snaps. And he just has so much more upside than any other free agent wide receiver. Also, Jaden Reed. For Jaden Reed, probably not someone who's ever going to project in the top, 27, I would say, in any given week moving forward. But he comes back. He played 25 snaps, still had 4 receptions on 4 targets, clearly gets schemed usage. Probably going to be their second most valuable wide receiver rest of the season. I don't know. In a 10-team league, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, if you're ever even considering playing Jaden Reed. But as you extend past that into 12-team leagues, especially 14-team leagues, he is actually someone you could throw into wide receiver 3, throw into second flex spot in some good matchups, and maybe he does something. And then Luther Burden. It's probably not going to happen this year, but if Odunze's injury holds him out even more, he's going to project okay. I mean, he had 4 for 64 this last week. Didn't end up scoring a touchdown, but had some schemed usage near the end zone. 2 brutal matchups in a row is tough, but he's not a bad player to roster because he's very athletic, will get schemed usage, and if Burden remains out, he's the most valuable wide receiver on the team. At tight end, I wrote down 3 names as well. Again, you probably have tight end figured out at this point, but if you are streaming, it's Darren Waller, Isaiah Likely, and Theo Johnson. Waller did lay an egg this last week, but that was way more game script related. They ran the ball the entire second half. They didn't have to throw the ball. They didn't have to throw the ball to him when they did. If they were trailing in that game, I can promise you Darren Waller would have had more usage. Fairly unlikely they get up big and run the ball the whole second half against the Steelers, Bengals the next 2 weeks, and Steelers, Bengals, great matchups for tight ends. Bengals #1 matchup by a mile. Like even the broadcast was talking about it, being like, I don't understand how this is happening, but the Bengals refuse to put anyone on a tight end. It's like they completely sell out to stop every single wide receiver, but they're like, tight end, never heard of them. Like they don't care about the tight end position. They'll let you just scream across the middle of the field wide open. And so if we see next week the snaps, because we're not going to trust Waller next week because of the dud he just had, but if the snaps trend up, if the usage trends up, he's probably going to be a top 5 play in week 16. So you're basically rostering him for that upside. If he goes out there next week, plays another 45% of the snaps, doesn't do anything, we're not going to trust him week 16. But you're rostering him because if he does see the usage ramp up and we can project a trailing game script that week, and maybe the Dolphins win and they're still in must-win mode in that next week, like, yeah, he's going to be a top 5 play. So you're just adding him kind of for that upside. Winner of the Week 15 Bengals sweepstakes for who they play at tight end is the Ravens. Mark Andrews probably not a free agency, but Isaiah Likely was the one that went off in their last matchup. Again, look at the last 2 games for Likely. He would be by far the #1 option for everyone in everyone's minds. People would be dropping like 30% of their fab on him if he scored those 2 touchdowns. But it's like 2 weeks ago in this matchup, he had a great game, but then he fumbles the ball like the 1 centimeter yard line and doesn't score a touchdown. Then this last week, a fairly questionable call. I think by the rule, it probably was the right call, but like by the spirit of the game, I feel like he scored that touchdown this last week because he like catches the ball, takes multiple steps in the end zone, and then it kind of gets bounced out. It was definitely on him. I don't know what his fascination is with like holding the ball over the goal line for everyone to slap at it, but like if you don't have strong enough hands to hold on to the ball while it's there, put it in your chest. Like I don't understand what he's doing, but maybe that gets fixed. And again, the Bengals do not guard the tight end position. So if you've been streaming tight end, which still a lot of people technically do at this point in the season, if you've been streaming tight end, Isaiah Likely is probably going to project in that tight end like 9 to 13 range, like on the higher end of the options where, you know, it's basically you're going to need a touchdown. The Bengals tight ends are probably going to score a touchdown. They're probably going to have a decent amount of yards. They're probably going to do pretty well. You don't know which one it's going to be, but it's been Likely recently. He is their big play guy, so he's going to be a good option this coming week. And then Theo Johnson, just like a solid mid-range tight end too. This is more so for you in like deeper leagues, but Jackson Dart clearly likes him. He especially will throw him the ball in the red zone. He's not a tight end 1, but if you've been streaming, maybe you lost Zach Ertz and you need someone, he's not a bad option. Also, if you are still somehow streaming quarterback, Mariota's opened up this week, but that's all we really have. You should probably have quarterback figured out, but if you lost Daniel Jones, if you lost Jaden Daniels, like some of you just lost your quarterback, Mariota will be the option. I don't think Daniels is going to play. Like they're so out of it at this point. I know they want to like develop him, but at this point, it's like you gotta just pack it up. Like, and I'm someone who I have Daniel Jones on one of my playoff teams. I very much want him to play. It's a 14-team league. I want or Jaden Daniels. I want him to play. The problem is like why? Why on earth would you play him rest of season if you're the Commanders? Put him on ice, get him healthy, bulk him up this offseason or something. But I think it's going to be Mariota rest of season. They have a road matchup with the Giants. Not a bad spot, not a good spot. I would say that's fairly average. We'll see what the weather is like in New York this coming week, but he'll probably be like a solid mid to high end quarterback too. So again, everything will be free on the website through the Super Bowl, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. A ton of content goes live tomorrow, so just hold off until then. You're not going to see anything today besides the waiver table, but if you watch this video, you got that information. And if you're out of it and you want to play Underdog, you want to play DraftKings, something like that, then we have free content for that as well starting tomorrow. All right, good luck to everyone who needs a miracle tonight. I'll be back on Thursday to break down every single game, talk about all the players I'd be starting and sitting this week. Please subscribe, click the like button if you are new here, if you enjoyed the video, but I'll catch you all on the next one.